Eagles. We're talking about the Eagles in the latest episode of the Football Game Tonight podcast. I'm your host, John Kuzma. So we're going to start with the Eagles. That's what we're talking about in this latest episode. And we're talking about Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley signed with the Eagles. And I'm thinking about the Eagles situation. You know, DeAndre Swift was so much better with the Eagles than he was with the Lions. DeAndre Swift looked light years ahead of where he was at with the Lions when he joined the Eagles. And it wasn't just DeAndre Swift. You look at Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was a much better player with the Eagles than he was with the Panthers. So the fact that the Eagles have this system that is kind of conducive to offensive success and in particular the running back position, the fact that Saquon Barkley is going to be playing in that system is huge. And don't get me wrong, I know Jason Kelsey isn't there anymore. This team still has Lane Johnson. They still have Landon Dickerson. They still have some dogs up front that could open some holes. You know, yeah, losing Jason Kelsey hurts, but there's still going to be running lanes there. And I still think Saquon Barkley is going to take advantage of those openings, and he's going to run to daylight and break off some big gains for this Eagles offense, and it's going to be impressive to watch. And you look at this Eagles offense, you know, they might have the best weapons in the league. You got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith, you have Saquon Barkley. To me, it puts a little bit of pressure on Jalen Hurts, because if you have the best weapons in the league, the last thing you want to do is be the weakest link. Now, I know the Eagles got Kenny Pickett, but I still firmly believe that Jalen Hurts is the guy for the Eagles. I think he's the guy, and I think he is good enough to rise up to the challenge, but there's no denying having these great weapons does put a little bit more pressure on Jalen Hurts, because if these other guys are, you know, balling out and performing at a high level, and Jalen Hurts kind of struggles a little bit like he did this past year, it's going to be a glaring weakness for this team. So that can't happen. And, you know, there's a lot of mouths to feed too. So those guys are depending on Jalen Hurts to get them the football, you know, put them in a position to make plays and let them capitalize on their talents. You do that by giving guys targets, by looking their way and, you know, getting them the football, making sure the throws are on time in the right place. Those are the things Jalen Hurts has to do if he wants to get the most out of, you know, this Eagles offense that's looking a lot better. It's looking a lot better with Saquon Barkley, just because, I mean, what this guy's going to bring to this team, it's going to be electric. Watching this offense perform with Saquon Barkley is going to be electric, just because he's a dynamic football player, and he just has such a knack for making big plays. You look at what he was able to do for the Giants, and the Giants didn't have these weapons. The Giants didn't have the Eagles' weapons. They didn't have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, they didn't have that offensive line. The Giants are basically depleted of talent. And a couple of years ago, you know, Saquon Barkley put the team on his back and carried them to the playoffs. A team that had no business being in the playoffs, Saquon Barkley willed them there, because that's how good Saquon Barkley was. And, you know, he was at the center of Brian Daboll's offense, really making everything click. If you took him away from that team, they would have been the same Giants team we've seen this past year that, you know, wasn't worth a dime. So to me, you know, Saquon Barkley is going to be electric. He's going to make a lot of big plays, all the broken tackles and the yards after contact, and how, you know, the other players on this team are going to feed off the energy that Saquon Barkley brings to the table. It's exciting. It's an exciting time for the Eagles fans, because they know they're going to have a real shot at, you know, being in the hunt again. And that's, you know, a testament to Howie Roseman and how good of a GM he's been in the National Football League. I can make a case he's been the best general manager in the league, just because he always finds a way to reload. And, you know, these other teams that are kind of held back by a lack of cap space and they can't maneuver, Howie Roseman is never constrained by those things. He's not. And he goes out and he gets Saquon Barkley and he realizes, hey, if this guy is doing this with a much inferior Giants team that lacks talent, what's he going to do when he gets around our guys? What's he going to do when he gets behind our offensive line? We know that, Saquon Barkley's best days are most likely in front of him. And we know he's just going to be chopping away at these defenses, chopping away at them. And it's going to make, defending this Eagles offense very tough. Just because how do you stop all these playmakers on the field? They're going to be running. They're going to be throwing. There's going to be big plays. There's not going to be a way to contain all these playmakers. Talent wins games in the National Football League, and the Eagles just have too much talent. To me, another storyline in all this is, Saquon Barkley going back to Pennsylvania. Obviously, a star at Penn State. We all know what he was able to do with the Nittany Lions, just how good he was there at Penn State, running all over teams. Electric in college. He was better in college than he was in the pros, but, he was on a bad football team with the Giants. For most of those years, they were a bad team. I think we can all agree with that. So going to a team that's always in the hunt, that's always a contender, it's a change of scenery. And him going back to Pennsylvania where he established some roots in college and where he's loved by the fans because of what he was able to do at Penn State, I think that's a good story too, just because obviously the guy has a connection to the state of Pennsylvania after going to college there and what he was able to accomplish. And now he goes back to Pennsylvania and he's going to play for the Eagles. I think the fans in Pennsylvania are, they're jumping up and down in joy because, Saquon Barkley is coming back. He's coming back to Pennsylvania, and he was a star at Penn State. Now he's playing for the Eagles. I mean, come on, man. This is a great story for Saquon Barkley, and I can see why he did it. People within the Giants organization are so mad at him for, flipping from one NFC East team to another. And, the Giants didn't do a good enough job with Saquon Barkley. They didn't do a good enough job taking care of him. He should have been paid before Daniel Jones got paid. Daniel Jones should have never got paid. He shouldn't even got paid. And Saquon Barkley doesn't get another contract. So can you blame him with the history he has with the state of Pennsylvania for wanting to go to the Eagles? He's probably thinking, I had some great years at Penn State. You guys aren't going to pay me? Okay, fine. I'll go to the Eagles. I'll go back to Pennsylvania where I'm loved by the whole entire state, where I made a name for myself as one of the best running backs in the whole country. It was a no-brainer for Saquon Barkley. It was a no-brainer. It was a smart move on him. Giants didn't want to take care of him. Not only did they not want to take care of him, they took care of Daniel Jones. Let him sit with their bad decisions. But front office and the organization is going to make such a dumb, boneheaded move when we all know Daniel Jones shouldn't even been paid. We're hearing these rumors that the Giants are talking about drafting a quarterback in this upcoming draft. I mean, why'd you pay Daniel Jones to begin with? Now, don't get me wrong. I know Daniel Jones isn't good enough. That's why they're looking at a quarterback. But you should have known before you gave him this big contract that he wasn't good enough. And to offer Daniel Jones a contract and not give Saquon Barkley what he wants when he was the catalyst to all that success, was carrying Brian Dable's offense and taking this team to the playoffs, it wasn't Daniel Jones. You could have put Tyrod Taylor in there. The team would have been fine. But if you took Saquon Barkley out of the equation, that team would have collapsed into ruins. Into ruins. So for the Giants to mess that up so bad, I don't blame them, or I don't blame Saquon for leaving and going to the Eagles. I don't blame him at all. The Giants got it wrong. Let them sit with that error. Think about, the running lanes, though. You got, like I said, Lane Johnson still there, Landon Dickerson, and the way they execute their offense, how they all slide in unison, and it opens up the cutback for the running backs, and how coordinated they are on that offensive front, the way they maul people at the line of scrimmage. just how good this team has been at running the football. And you got Jalen Hurts that's able to pull the zone read and keep it himself. We know he's a talented runner too. It's a monster. Stopping all these rushing attack, different, styles of rushing attack, whether it's Saquon Barkley, whether it's Jalen Hurts, whether it's some of the other guys they bring off the bench, it's going to be tough to stop this running game. And, the fact that, Jalen Hurts, I don't want to call him a running back because I don't like when people call quarterbacks a running back because to me it's just a lame insult to throw at somebody. But Jalen Hurts is a talented runner, and he's a guy that can pull it, take off, and beat you with his legs as well. So now you got a game plan for stopping the first option on the handoff to Saquon Barkley, and you also have to keep contained on the backside of the ball so Jalen Hurts doesn't pull the football, keep himself, and beat you around the end. Easier said than done. It's not going to be easy to stop both those guys. And you look at the best running threats in the league. I'm looking at Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry now. I'm looking at Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. Those two teams took this thing to another level by going out and getting these big-time running backs. Just because you can't defend both of them. It's so hard to stop Saquon Barkley as it is. It was hard to stop Saquon Barkley with Daniel Jones or all the other quarterbacks that were playing with the Giants. Can you imagine him and Jalen Hurts running zone reads and, Jalen Hurts running naked bootlegs off the fake to Saquon Barkley? Good luck stopping that. That's going to be a long, long day for the defense. It's going to be a nightmare. It just creates favorable matchups for the Eagles. And, defense coordinators are going to be up all night trying to figure out how to game plan and how to stop this. And, remember what Mike Tyson said. Everybody has a game plan until you get punched in the mouth. And the Eagles are going to punch teams in the mouth. Like I said, if DeAndre Swift was chopping teams up like that last year, one of the better running backs in the league, Saquon Barkley is going to another level. He's going to put up huge, huge numbers in this offense. Which makes me wonder, will Saquon Barkley rush for 2,000 yards? Now, 2,000 yards is a lot. I think about Chris Johnson when he did it. I think about some of the other guys that were able to do it. Barry Sanders, I believe Adrian Peterson did it as well. 2,000 yards is a lot. It's not easy to do. You're talking about a miracle season if you rush for 2,000 yards. Is it possible? Certainly possible with Saquon Barkley. But, 1,500, 1,800, that seems a little bit more realistic just because the Eagles have such good wide receivers that, they're not depleted on the offensive side of the ball where they just had to run it every single time just to have a little bit of life on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to be more balanced than that. They're going to be throwing it with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. We know A.J. Brown demands the football. He's not going to sit there and let them run it all day. He'll say, hey, I need my targets. I need the ball. So just because they're so well balanced, I don't know if Saquon Barkley will hit 2,000 yards, but he's going to put up 1,500, 1,800 yards, and he's going to chop away at these teams. And it will add another dynamic to this offense. It will add a lightning bolt to this offense. And what I mean by that is they're going to be electric. They're going to be – the big plays are going to happen over and over again. And, what happens is it's deflating for the opposite team. When you have to – stop this running back and you just can't do it. He just keeps, moving the chains and he just keeps, hitting you with these haymakers that kind of knock the wind out of you. And before you know it, you're out of fight because the team just loses hope a little bit because they're just getting beat down by this running back Saquon Barkley over and over again. And what happens is I've seen teams in football fold up. I've seen them fold up before to the point where they're broken. It's almost like a heavyweight boxing match when you see a boxer just beat the hell out of the other boxer to the point that the other boxer has nothing left. The lights are on, but nobody's home. You better believe that can happen to an NFL defense. It happens all the time in football. They put up a fight, but when things start tilting in the Eagles' favor, and then the Eagles start to run away with it, what happens? The other team starts to fold up shop because they just can't stop Saquon Barkley. They just keep getting gashed by Saquon Barkley. And just when they think that they're tightening up and they got him and now they can contain him and get back in the game, Saquon Barkley breaks another one, the long one, and goes for a long touchdown. And now what happens? The defense is completely deflated. Once that happens, they're going to fold up shop. So, like I said, I don't know about 2000 just because I think the Eagles are too balanced. I think A.J. Brown's going to want his touches. I think Devontae Smith wants the ball too. And with how good those receivers are on the outside, I think they're going to demand the football. So it's not like this is going to be 80% run and 20% pass. To be honest, it could still be 60-40 pass to run. That could be their ratio. I mean, this offense is so good at what they do, you almost don't want to change too much. I just think putting Saquon Barkley in that DeAndre Swift role with how good DeAndre Swift was, Saquon Barkley takes it to just another dimension when it comes to this Eagles offense. I think the Eagles will put it all on Saquon Barkley too when it comes to maybe not necessarily the ratio, but I think when it comes to down to crunch time and when it matters, I think that's Saquon Barkley time. Now, early on in the game, I think they'll be more balanced. And like I said, they might even be 60-40 pass to run ratio where they're passing 60% of the time and running 40% of the time. But I think when it's crunch time and when the game matters, I think it's Saquon Barkley time. And I think, when you have a running back and you have an offensive line that can get the job done, it's a safer play to turn around and hand the football off than it is to throw the football because you're more likely to throw an interception than have a running back fumble or botched exchange on a handoff to the running back. Running the ball safer. And when you have a guy that's as dynamic as Saquon Barkley is, and it's crunch time, you let your horse run away with it and you let him do the damage that he does. And what's going to happen is it's going to open up more windows in the passing game for A.J. Brown, for Devontae Smith, the rest of the guys they have there. So, to me, I think, crunch time, game on the line, maybe late in the fourth quarter, you let Saquon Barkley eat because he's good enough to rise to the occasion. And he's in such a favorable situation that the chances of him having success when he gets the ball in those crunch time situations, I think he's going to take over. I really do. It's nice, having that running back that's so good that you can put it all on him in those, crunch time situations. Because as good as DeAndre Swift was, I think last year when you look at, late in the fourth quarter in a close game, I think they were trying to throw the ball. As good as DeAndre Swift was, there was a little bit of a lack of a trust when it was crunch time to just hand it off to DeAndre Swift. And I can make a case that in the second half of the season, the Eagles didn't go to DeAndre Swift enough. He started off the season really hot, was playing really well. That second half of the season, they kind of went away from him, and it hurt this team's chances of success. Now, do you think that's going to happen with Saquon Barkley? No, I don't. I think everybody in that locker room, that on the coaching staff, I think everybody knows that Saquon Barkley needs to be fed in order for this team to optimize their chances of success. And like I said, they went away from that with DeAndre Swift. I think that was a mistake by the Eagles But when you have Saquon Barkley, just because of the brand that he's been able to establish as a player, just because of his track record of success, it's a little bit easier to get away from DeAndre Swift than it is to get away from Saquon Barkley. Because DeAndre Swift was performing good at the beginning of the season, but is DeAndre Swift on A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith's level? No, he wasn't. He was just elevated because he was in a good system. But Saquon Barkley, you can make a case that maybe he is better than those two other guys. And I know some people will say, well, A.J. Brown might have a better case over Saquon Barkley because of what he's been able to achieve in the NFL. And I hear that. But it's a lot closer than it was with DeAndre Swift. And I think even A.J. Brown understands that. I think when the Eagles were going to DeAndre Swift, A.J. Brown's sitting there thinking, hey, don't forget about me. You know what I bring to the table. But if the Eagles are going to Saquon Barkley, I think it's a little bit different for A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown has respect for Saquon Barkley, just like we all do, because we've all seen what he's capable of all the way going back to college. So I think when it comes to sharing the torch a little bit, A.J. Brown will be a little bit more lenient when it comes to Saquon Barkley because he understands just how good Saquon Barkley is. You get what I'm saying? I think when DeAndre Swift was getting the ball, A.J. Brown's like, hey, I'm better than this guy. I should be getting the ball, and the offense should flow through me. With Saquon Barkley, I think even if it's, a few less touches a game that, or I should say targets a game that A.J. Brown is getting, but still I think he's going to be okay with it because it's Saquon Barkley getting the ball, and nobody's going to have a problem with Saquon Barkley getting the ball because he increases this team's chances of winning. The other thing is, the offense is going to flow through Barkley, and basically what that means is this team is going to let Saquon Barkley open the other things up. When Saquon Barkley touches the ball, defenses creep up and crowd the box to take away the passing lanes. And now A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are in one-on-one situations. Those situations were not as frequent with DeAndre Swift. They weren't as frequent with Miles Sanders. And when you have Saquon Barkley, because he's so dangerous, that means the offense kind of flows through him because what happens is it's almost like a jab in boxing. You start with the jab, and your offense as a boxer flows through the jab. Saquon Barkley is the jab, and then A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are the hook. And when you have a better jab, it opens up even bigger haymakers on the outside. That's what I mean when I say the offense will flow through Saquon Barkley, even if they're only running the ball 40% of the time. Still, the offense flows through him because he's so much better than these other two running backs that came before him, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, that you have to put all your focus on stopping Saquon because teams can be beaten by the jab alone. The jab itself can beat you. If you don't stop that jab, Saquon Barkley alone is going to beat you. And when you start putting your hands on the inside, boom, A.J. Brown haymaker. Boom, Devontae Smith haymaker. Boom, Jalen Hurts just pulled the zone read and took off and went 65 yards down the right sideline for a touchdown. There's different phases to this offense. And things get unlocked when you can run a simple dive play and get 8 yards per carry. And you look at Saquon Barkley's build, the way his lower body is just, the dude is a ball of muscle. He's so strong. And those spin moves that he pulls off, I mean, you might think the safety at 8 yards is going to stop him. And then, boom, spin move. And another 20 yards on top of it. Now it's a 28-yard gain instead of an 8-yard gain. Okay, now after 28 yards, what's the defense thinking? Okay, we got to blitz up the A-gap to just clog the lanes up to stop Saquon Barkley up the middle. Well, now it's a Saquon Barkley toss to the outside. And now he gashes you for 5 or 6 yards. And now it's another favorable down and distance for the Eagles. And it's just like, okay, we stopped them on the inside by blitzing again, and now they're running outside and beating us on tosses with Saquon Barkley. How do we stop all this? And then they flip to the opposite side of the field and start beating you up that way too. It's just good luck stopping this. Good luck stopping this Eagles offense. It's going to be fun watching, this offense flow through Saquon and open up the naked bootleg for Jalen Hurts. Watching the play action pass open up down the field to A.J. Brown. Watching Devontae Smith catch a slant route over the middle because the other team's blitzing both outside linebackers just to try to contain Saquon and bottle him up in the backfield. But now Devontae Smith is catching a slant turn upfield and off to the races. That's why a lot of this offense is certainly going to flow through Saquon Barkley, and it's going to be tough to stop. And because of that, Saquon Barkley is going to make everyone around him better. DeAndre Swift was made better by a favorable situation with the Eagles. But Saquon Barkley makes everybody around him better. Everybody's going to be better with Saquon Barkley just because you have a superstar in your backfield that has the ability to take over games. He can take over games. And when you have a guy that can take over games, now you have stars everywhere. All across the board, you have superstars. And everybody's going to be better. Everybody is going to be better because of Saquon Barkley. Just because this team's going to feed him. And the team, like I said earlier, the team's going to feed off of his energy and the big gains he brings to the running game. Everybody's going to be better. I think even Jalen Hurts has the opportunity to make a big jump just because Saquon Barkley is going to make him better too. When teams are getting beat by the running game and the Eagles are winning because Saquon Barkley's taking over, that's less pressure that Jalen Hurts has to deal with. That's less criticism from the media that Jalen Hurts has to deal with. And when he doesn't have to deal with those things, his confidence is going to grow. He's going to be even more confident. And that's going to allow him to become a better football player. Saquon Barkley allows that to happen. Like I said, the receivers are going to be better. I think, tight end down the middle of the field is going to be better. This whole situation is looking, I'm telling you, it's looking pretty for the Eagles. Saquon Barkley is also going to make the Eagles more physical. And this is such a big thing in the sport of football. Usually the team that's more physical wins. It's a physical game. And yeah, sure, there's some finesse teams that can get by. But even this Eagles team was a little bit more finesse last year. They're going to be more physical with Saquon Barkley. And, when you can't get that running back down, when he's wearing teams down and those linebackers don't want to hit anymore just because Saquon Barkley's so muscular and he just keeps lowering his head and putting the boom on these linebackers, what do you think happens? I mean, they're going to get gashed. And as the game goes on, that fatigue really starts to wear teams down too. And that's when you see the Eagles bust this thing open. So the ability to take over games with his physicality and just how much tougher the Eagles are going to be with Saquon Barkley. I mean, we all know, really 2 years ago when they went to the Super Super Bowl, we knew how physical they were on the defensive side of the ball. And I do think they have the pieces to be physical on defense this year too. But now that they have a more physical offense, I think they're going to be a more well-rounded team. And I think they're going to be able to, just punish some of these defenders. I mean, think about the safeties and corners. We're talking about the linebackers getting wore down. Think about if you're a cornerback trying to tackle Saquon Barkley. You're going to get beat up a little bit. Think about if you're a safety. I mean, those second and third level are the third level guys, I guess you can say, with the safeties. And I guess cornerbacks are maybe more second level because they line up right on the receiver near the line of scrimmage usually, unless they're bailing and doing a cover three bail technique. Usually they're up near the line of scrimmage, but still the secondary, the cornerbacks, the safeties, those guys can't tackle Saquon Barkley. They're in for a long day if they are tasked with tackling Saquon Barkley. And that's another favorable matchup for the Eagles because now you're thinking, what can we do to get Saquon Barkley on a cornerback? We've already beaten up the linebackers a little bit up the middle, and they can't really tackle him. Now let's get Saquon Barkley out on the edge somehow, and let's see these cornerbacks try to tackle Saquon Barkley. How's that going to go for these opposing defenses? Not good. It's not going to go their way, I promise you that. Saquon Barkley is going to be juking these guys out of their shoes. You're going to see a lot of lame duck attempts when it comes to trying to tackle Saquon Barkley, just because these cornerbacks are just going to kind of give up because they know they can't do it and they don't want to get hurt. Believe me, we've seen it before in the National Football League where people make business decisions. You get Saquon Barkley out there on the edge in a one-on-one against the cornerback, you're going to see a lot of business decisions from these secondary players. So I think he's going to make the Eagles much tougher and much more physical. Another thing I have to applaud the Eagles for, I have to applaud the Eagles for spending on a running back. We've been hearing the past 2 or 3 years that it's not smart to spend money on a running back. It's not smart to spend money on a running back. You overpay. The chances of them getting hurt are high. They fall off a cliff fast. We've heard it all. And we've seen a lot of these running backs get snubbed when it comes to earning their big payday. Guys that deserved it didn't get the money that they deserved, including Saquon Barkley with the Giants. I think the Eagles are smart for signing Saquon Barkley. I think they're smart for spending big on the running back position because of those things we mentioned earlier in this podcast. He makes them more physical. The offense can flow through him. He's going to take advantage of those running lanes that the Eagles are so good at creating. I think he makes everyone around him better. I think he's going to be electric. I think now the Eagles have the best weapons in football. All those things lead me to believe that the Eagles are smart for spending big on the running back position. I think this was the outlier. If you subscribe to the belief that you shouldn't spend big on the running back position, I think Saquon Barkley is the outlier. I think he's the guy where you can say, okay, this is different. This is Saquon Barkley. He carried that Giants team to the playoffs a couple years ago. He has the ability to take over football games. And I think when you add him to the Eagles system, it's going to be a recipe for success, not only for Saquon Barkley, but for the team as well. So I think Howie Roseman is very smart for, just opening up the checkbook and getting this one done and understanding that it is Saquon Barkley and this is a different situation. By getting Saquon Barkley, it's this team's best chance at winning the Super Bowl. I think they're closer than they were this past year. Remember, they had the collapse at the end of the season where this team didn't even look like a contender anymore and morale had fallen off a cliff. It got ugly. I don't think that happens with Saquon Barkley. I think a new day is among us for Eagles fans. I think it's a new dawn. And I think there's a lot to be excited about if you're an Eagles fan, just because Saquon Barkley does give this team the chance of hoisting another Vince Lombardi trophy. So that leads me to the next question. Should Jason Kelce come back? I know Jason Kelce just retired. I know he doesn't want to come back, but one more seems like the right move for Jason Kelce, because that offensive line is on a different level when Jason Kelce is there. There's no doubt about that. And I think they can plug in someone else, and I think they'll be fine. But, with Jason Kelce and Saquon Barkley, Jason Kelce has to realize, okay, this is a real shot at winning another ring. And then you get the fairy tale ending where you get to go out on a high note, go out like Michael Strahan did after winning the Super Bowl, then ride off into the sunset. If you're Jason Kelce and you have that connection to the Eagles, why wouldn't you want that fairy tale ending? To me, that's too good to pass up. Okay, we have a real shot at winning a Super Bowl. I get to win a Super Bowl and ride off into the sunset. And I know he's tired. He's been playing his whole life. I know he's banged up from all the years of playing pro football and, the fact that he's played since he was a little kid. I know the wear and tear that's on his body. But even he's sitting there thinking, hey, we got Saquon Barkley, man. How fun would it be to block for Saquon Barkley? It's an exciting time for the Eagles. It's an exciting time for Jason Kelce, too. So if I'm Jason Kelce, I am seriously considering deciding to hold off on retirement for 1 year and playing one more season for the Eagles. One more. We all know this is the last one. You got one shot, do or die for the Super Bowl. If you're Jason Kelce, you got to be weighing your options. I know he is because they got Saquon Barkley and the team reloaded. And I don't think the Eagles will have the letdown that they had a year ago. When you have that kind of letdown that the Eagles had at the end of the season, that kind of tilts things in retirement's favor if you're Jason Kelce, because you're like, that wasn't fun at the end of the season. Having that meltdown and everybody being disgruntled and how bad morale was, that's not fun if you're Jason Kelce. That's not something you stick around for. When you're on the bubble of sticking around or retiring and you think about how bad the season ended, you guys weren't even competitive. In fact, you guys were self-destructing because of ego and selfishness and just things that make football not very fun. I don't think that happens with Saquon Barkley. I don't think it happens. I don't think Saquon Barkley will allow that to happen, because the guy is so competitive and so vocal on the sidelines. He would never allow that to happen. He would never allow guys to mentally check out of it. Yeah, that might have happened with the Giants, but there was no saving the Giants. They were so bad, the problems were bigger than Saquon Barkley. They're not in Philadelphia. If people start checking out and their heads aren't in it, Saquon Barkley is competitive enough on the sidelines where he's going to speak up. He's going to speak up, and he's going to fire people up. He's going to motivate them to play. I promise you that. So you're not going to have that meltdown that this team had at the end of last year, where everybody's checked out and you're losing the teams that you shouldn't have lost to, because clearly the Eagles were the better team. But there was a problem with the culture. I think this team is past those problems. I think for Jason Kelce, that's huge too, because nobody wants to be a part of an epic collapse that the Eagles had at the end of this past season. Jason Kelce definitely doesn't want to come back for that shit. There's no denying that. But that won't be the case with Saquon Barkley, which is why Jason Kelce can come back. And if you have Jason Kelce and if you have Saquon Barkley, well, guess what? We could be talking about another Chiefs and Eagles Super Bowl, a rematch of what happened last time, which, remember, that game went down to the wire. So if you're the Eagles and you're Jason Kelce, you won one, you got to be licking your chops at getting back to another Super Bowl. Obviously, this is your best chance to do it with Saquon Barkley. I think one more for Jason Kelce might be worth it. And I think it's not just Jason Kelce. I think Jason Kelce's family, his wife and his family would understand too why he would be coming back. I think they would understand, okay, you got Saquon Barkley now. It's really going to be special this time. So it's worth allowing Jason Kelce to come back. Because remember, it's a big commitment. You lose out on a lot of time with your family. So if your family understands, and they also understand that, hey, we don't want you to go out like that. We don't want you to go out how this team went out this past year. We at least want to see it end on a high note where you're at least competitive and playing up to the Philadelphia Eagles standard. They're going to have a shot this year with Saquon Barkley. I'm John Kuzma. This is the Football Game Tonight podcast. You can check us out wherever podcasts are found. YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, the whole 9 yards. Anywhere podcasts are found. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm John Kuzma. I'm signing off.